in a lot of stores. So it's little wonder that smart shoppers everywhere take time out to pause and refresh. And where else but in the fountain where they serve ice-cold Coca-Cola?
The eMilitia Podcast, Episode 44, Anti-War War Vet. Enjoy, fuckers.
I thought me and Guns didn't even discuss who's doing the intro, but I'm going to do it before he can get in on it. So, hello and welcome to the eMilitia Podcast. Today we are joined by my co-hosts, Guns and Guillotines, Miss Buckles, Rebellious Liberty, and I'm Bloody Revolutions, aka BR. And our guest today is Anti-War War Vet, aka John, as we're referring to him in the show. So what brings you to where you are? I mean, it's a long old story going from signing your life away to the state to flying.
Yeah, I felt like running a meme page was going to be more lucrative, so I went this route.
There you go.
Hey man, once you get to where I am, shit just starts rolling in.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, I just broke 1,000 like a week and a half ago. So
took me 2 days.
Yeah, not me. Yeah. So I don't know, man. I was deployed to Afghanistan with the Marines. I was deployed as a motor T. So I was driving. We were doing fuel security, and I was out of Leatherneck. We were running up to Edinburgh, and then like through. We'd do some runs to Sangin, Nowzad, Shergazi, Musakela. And it was ridiculous. Like the deployment was ultimately like the perfect example of the war of attrition that the Taliban are fighting. They're paying these locals at the threat of gunpoint to shoot some rifles off at the sides of these fuel trucks, and then a bunch of 19-year-old kids are out there trying to plug these holes. JP8's like $100 a gallon by the time it gets to us. And I was reading. Yeah, it was crazy. I was reading a lot, and one of the formative books, weird enough, was an Orwell book that's much less read called Message to Catalonia. It's about his time in the fighting for Spain.
It's a great read.
It's so good, and it felt really familiar to me because we'd spend hours and hours and hours. I mean, some of these convoys would take like 17 days. We'd get it's a 200-mile run. It just couldn't be more Marine Corps. We get stuck in the middle of the desert. You would get red air or something, we'd just be stranded. And it was the worst. I had fun at the time, but the more I thought back on it, and I got home and started reading, the first libertarian book I read, I think, was like The Law, just like some Kokesh recommendation. And just kind of started me on the path. And I decided that my career wasn't going the way I wanted it to. So I figured I'd get on Instagram and turn it all around.
Instagram is a starting point for major change. Oddly enough, I mean, I say this every time we talk about this kind of thing, origin stories, but without Instagram, I'd be a fucking neocon still, probably plugging away at a desk somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, it's how you get out and change minds and stop people from doing the same stupid shit we've all done. Whatever.
Well, it's been cool. Like I haven't really interacted with a ton of people regularly, but the few that I have, I've gotten some cool feedback. One kid actually told me that he was showing his page to his brother thinking about enlisting, which was cool. But
that's a big thing. When you hear people actually like responding and being like, yeah, you actually made me look at it, made me consider it, instead of just getting one side of the story, which is,
saving lives, man.
Being
one meme at a time.
And defending freedom and shit. Yeah.
By the way, that book is called Homage to Catalonia. For those.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
That's where it was a message.
But maybe there are different translations, but the one I'm pretty sure. I mean, there's no way that it's George Orwell, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way there's two separate books by George Orwell. But maybe they're just... Well, no,
Oh,
he's
no.
English. It's probably Homage. Anyway, it's a good read. It wasn't intended to be a libertarian book, but it is basically because it highlights how fucking horrible collectivism is at doing anything at all, even when everybody wants it to.
Yeah, and it really struck me that they would sit around in the cold and wait and stare at the people across the way
And
and
count their 5 bullets.
right, and
And
like
put olive
had-
oil on their rifles and shit.
right, they had no animosity, and I mean he's a transplant, but he was trying to communicate that like not only he but the people who were like ethnic Spaniards don't give a shit about this war, and you know it's
That
weird
sounds
because
familiar.
you could, yeah, right. But like they could certainly argue that they were fighting some moral high ground, and I think in some sense they were. But we didn't have any of that as a GWAT guys, and so it just, you know, the more I thought about the actual tangible results of what we were doing there, and running fuel couldn't be a more mundane, ridiculous task in the first place. And then when you see, you know, like kids getting killed and stuff like that, it's hard to wrap your mind around whatever justification Obama or Bush are giving, you know?
Yeah, and the value of like the loss, you know, like it was this investment of, you know, blood and money worth it?
Right.
Do we
Exactly.
see the freedom that was gained from it? That's something that we never hear being told to people, you know, looking into the military for the first time. And that's something I'm very grateful for, the growing number of anti-war vets, you know, yourself, the Biting the Bullet guys, and I mean Whiskey for one, just all popping up, and anti-state, can't forget anti-state. we got a pretty flush community these days, and it wasn't always like that, but more and more people are realizing like you attract more. What is it? Attract more bees with honey than vinegar.
Yep.
And I mean, this community, I remember way back when it was like, you know, fuck you, like the kind of spit on vets attitude, you know, like, oh, you're a stormtrooper, fuck you. And it's like, I get it, but
I still do
guess
that to
what?
cops.
That's, yeah, well, fuck off. But but like so many kids, you know, they see that sentiment and they're like, oh well, these guys are just horrible anarchists, you know, I guess these are the good guys because they're getting shit on so much. And we didn't have that balance of guys explaining themselves like, yeah, I was part of the machine, now I'm not, didn't like it much, here's why. And I'm glad that basically everyone I've talked to, every anti-war vet I've met thus far has been very measured in how they talk about it, because to completely do a 180 on your views, it takes, I mean, some fucking balls and a brain.
Well, and I think too, like, you know, I worked EMS on, you know, I was on an ambulance for 6 years, and then I'm now an ER nurse. And so it's the same kind of thing about cops. A lot of the guys
So you're a male nurse?
Well, it's MRS technically, but whatever.
Come on, Guns, have some fucking respect.
Just kidding. That's cool,
Yeah.
I guess. You get to hang out with a lot of women that I'm sure are attractive, so good for you.
I actually, if you were to poll any of my coworkers, they'd say that I'm not I'm not the compassionate nurse that everyone, you know, so many people.
That's what a male nurse should be, dude. That's your niche.
Yeah.
You need to be the one that's going to go in there and be like, listen, I'm going to slap you in the face. Like, I'm going to, like, nobody's in here. Nobody's going to know. You're going to say it. Nobody's going to believe you. I'm going to beat the shit out of you if you don't let them do this. All right.
Yeah, it's nursing is medicine in general. Emergency medicine is draining. But all I meant to say with all of that is that, like, it's the same thing about cops. Like, I think that there's a level of nuance that would be well served to the conversation, because I think a lot of these guys, vets, cops, whatever, like civil servants, however they want to consider themselves. Yeah, right. I think that there's some inroads there, but we paint with really broad strokes about them, and I think that the cultures are super toxic and terrible. But I think we could do a little bit more to reach those groups, because I think those are the groups that need it the most. You know, they're the most statist inclined.
Yeah, but I see it happening a lot less with. I barely see it happening at all with anybody except for military that's in combat situations.
As far as being like sympathetic to the anti-war view.
Yeah,
no, just as far as a mindset change.
Yeah,
and going
probably.
from statist to where we are. Because like if you like join the Air Force to like work human resources and that's what you want to do, and you do that, you're not going to see any of the shit that's like, oh fuck, that's wasteful. Or like, wow, that's fucked up. Like we shouldn't be doing that over there. Those
Right.
were like that's fucked. You don't see a whole lot of that. You're just like it's just like a civilian job, just on a base, But for people like you that were over there, or people like Whiskey, then they see a lot of how it just shouldn't be going on. Exactly what you were talking about with Orwell. Like it's just like, wow, this is fucking stupid once we think about it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also think like it's a kind of a self-selecting bias, right? So you're talking to a bunch of guys who don't have a ton of prospects for employment otherwise that end up in the military or police. And so they're not likely going to be the smartest group of people that you're trying to talk to. So asking them to read a library of books is tough. And that's what it takes, I think, ultimately to get to where we're at. That you don't meet too many libertarians who aren't well-read, at least on our own propaganda,
Yeah, no, it's true. And so many, we very easily reject people who aren't willing to do that.
Probably rightfully so.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand what you're supporting, then you're just a useful idiot. Whether you're on our side or anyone else's. But it is quite the jump, because the ideas are simple enough, but then the theory behind it to really be sold and to convince others of it. It's a lot.
You need to read. You need to read enough to be able to recite bumper stickers without thinking about them. And then you can convince people.
Yeah, it's hard. That's why I found Tom Woods was one of my first early influences and continues to be. And he does such a good job of getting this stuff down to the dumb guy level.
Oh, seriously.
So I point him to everybody to him, because he did a lot for me. I mean, I'm not a super intelligent guy, but
no, don't sell yourself short.
Well,
come on,
I
better than that, babe.
I'm not. I'm not fishing here. I appreciate it, but I just mean like I don't think you need to be like on his level.
Type. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you just need to.
You're probably pretty dumb. I agree.
Oh, yeah, I drink IPAs, as we said. So
all
right. Getting personal here.
Fuck you and your beer.
That's how we greet guests on this show. Like, what are you drinking? That's shit.
Bullshit, dude. Get the fuck out of here.
Feels like home.
So anyway, South Carolina's great, man. We're all like me.
No, that's terrible. I am never visiting. You're coming here, mate. We can deal with one of you, not a whole state.
Man. If I'm this way, society has made me so.
So John, what was kind of like did you have a breaking point, or was it very gradual, your kind of shift to volunteerism? Was it like I'm kind of disillusioned, or was it all of a sudden like, oh fuck, what's this,
Well, so this is something I've never shared publicly, doing the podcast circuit or anything, but right before I deployed to Afghanistan, and this will fit right in line with my IPA drinking, I was actually doing competitive slam poetry.
Oh my god, dude! Are you kidding me?
Drinking it, boy. Drink.
Oh my goodness!
Hold on, I was good. So.
I support you. I think.
I want you guys to enjoy this, relish the moment. So the summer before
Recite
I went.
Give us a poem. Give us a poem.
It's all just roses are red stuff, but the summer before I went to boot camp, I was actually in Chicago competing like in this national youth poetry thing, which is just what you would imagine it would be, right? Like it's just Chaz. It's just it's the best.
As far as I can see.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that's the only T-shirt I actually owned at the time, because I gave up the rest of my private property. But so I had this weird kind of juxtaposition between these two worlds, and it was certainly gradual, but I think I was at a base, like kind of a moderate Republican. Most of my family members are relatively conservative. And so I had some inclinations towards the right, and then I just found the entire effort really meaningless. And the thing that struck me, I think, probably the most is the sentiment amongst guys that we were over there with, that we weren't really fighting for any American cause per se, but that we were fighting for each other. And that came up over and over again.
But that's what they say, and I'm like, why are you selling that? Like in
Right.
every in one of my like when I was a statist idiot and I wanted to go into the military and everything, one of my favorite movies was Black Hawk Down. And I remember that scene where they're like, once that first grenade goes by your head, politics and all that bullshit goes straight out the window. It's just about you and the other guy. And I'm like, okay, but then
why the fuck are we
why
here?
didn't anybody think about like why they're there though? You know,
Yeah.
if there's no greater purpose there, just like, no,
Well, I
we're
mean-
just here. And then when the shit gets tough, then we're here for each other. Like, no, well, but then get out though.
Well,
You know,
I think, like
don't be there.
if you're in the Alamo, that's one thing. But this idea, I think, I've said this before a few times, but this idea of like a rash of veteran suicides or whatever, I think directly plays into this idea that once people get home and they're not in the thick of that groupthink mentality, and they start realizing there really was no purpose to the garbage that I was doing, maybe the objectively immoral things that I had to do, or I did do, I didn't have to do, but I think people have a hard time reconciling that, and I certainly did, which is how I ended up here. But I didn't kill anybody, and so I didn't have that hard of a time mentally. I think a lot of people do, and it's not about the recruiting commercials where you're out there slaying dragons anymore. I probably was the first person of my group that actually read any of the stuff that Osama bin Laden was saying. So that, this guy has turned into this, and rightfully so. I'm not running defense for Osama bin Laden, but he was like the ultimate boogeyman. And then when you read his stuff, one of the things that really struck me about what he said you're gonna fail at this military intervention because your guys don't have anything to fight for. And I was like, oh, he's right. What the hell are we fighting for?
Dude, spitting straight facts out here.
Yeah, OBL's
he's spitting straight facts.
Yeah, it's weird, man. And like we're in these systems. They introduced this system called the Crow system. It's a automated machine gun. It's got an interface with a little joystick in the truck.
Is that the one that shoots missiles? Oh, never mind.
No, it's just it was attached to a 240 Bravo, so it shoots 7.62 machine gun. All you have to do is get out of the truck to change the belt, and so whatever the box of ammo was, 500 rounds, 200 rounds, whatever, you'd have to get out. But otherwise, you didn't have a gunner in the turret, so it was a little bit more safe. And it was like playing a video game. You went in and you basically played like some COD simulation, and then you were certified to play it.
Disassociation.
Yeah. Key. And I had read on killing before and after boot camp and was acutely aware of that process. And my best friend since I was in second grade is a Muslim kid. His parents are both from North Africa, so I never really bought into the Islamic. Islam is in general being the enemy that we had to all unify and fight against. So I think I just kind of had the right intellectual foundations going in, and I was always kind of the belligerent dude anyway that would just run my mouth. So I got out and started reading Rothbard, and ended up on the eMilitia podcast. So
it's a steady rabbit hole. Eventually, everyone find themselves here if they pay attention. But
yeah,
are you out yet, or? Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You said about being a nurse and all that. What was the transition like for you then, getting out?
It was weird because I was actually a reservist, and so when I joined the Marines, got in, went to boot camp, went to my unit in Connecticut, and then I immediately got orders to go back and deploy. And so I was back on orders like a month later, and then I was on orders for the next year and a half or so. So when I finally got out was when I started really thinking about this stuff deeply. But it was kind of a weird situation because I'm still hanging out with all the guys I deployed with. We were all still close, still checking into the unit once a week or once a month rather. But I met my wife and started going to church, which was not something I was ever really interested in beforehand. And, all of that kind of combined ultimately led me to this. And it was definitely steady, but I would have probably considered myself an anarchist voluntarist by like 2014, 15, which is right about the time I got married and got out.
Damn, that's a long time to be sitting on all this. And
So you said,
I think.
I'm sorry. Go on.
I was gonna say, with that amount of time, have you found you've come across a certain degree of clarity with your philosophy at this point?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm never comfortable with saying hard and fast, like anarchism is the answer. And only because almost the first question I get every time I talk to somebody about this that I care about and that I'm having an intellectually honest conversation with, they ask where the examples are of this working in practice. And, you can point to like weird pockets of people in the mountainsides of some like UK, mining town or something, but ultimately there isn't one, right? And so there's plenty of answers as to why, but I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say that the U.S. and the 350 million people inside it should just hit the anarchy button tonight. I'm fairly pragmatic in that sense, and so I'd be interested in seeing radical decentralization. So when I'm talking to anybody, I push hard on the secession movement. I think we should secede. I think it's weird that guns and guillotine here. We were talking beforehand. We've had wholly different life experiences being from, would you say Florida?
No.
That's a good dig. I support it.
How dare you?
Yeah. So I'm from the Northeast. It's such a weird place here relative to.
I'm from South Carolina, by the way.
I didn't want to sell you out. So I don't know. There's nothing. I don't have anything. Portlanders or people in Arizona, right? Or Oklahoma or any of those spots. So why do I have to politically associate with them? Why do I have to vote? Why does my vote count the same? Why do we all have to choose one elected official with a red or a blue tie? It's all very odd. I think those things are certainly eye-opening to people, but
I think it's very reasonable to be like, why do we live under one blanket system for 350 million people from cultures all over the world? And it's that'll work out. That'll be nice and peaceful.
Have any of you guys read Alan Weissman's book Countdown?
I have not.
No.
It's an interesting read. He's like ultimately he's a Malthusian. He argues for the position that we need depopulation globally.
Oh fuck! I think I heard Anarchy Bull talking about this on Fadcast.
I wasn't convinced by the thesis, but ultimately he's a reporter, and so he talks about these small anecdotes of various geographical areas that struggle with overpopulation and limited resources and stuff. And I think that there could be a real conversation there for Americans about, in our lifetimes, all of us being in our 20s, 30s, 40s, there's going to be a radical shift, I think, in the way that we have to operate as people. And I'm not, going to go out and say that I think we need to just cull half the globe's population, but I do think we're going to have challenges that are unique to our generation outside of what we've already faced. And maybe that will kind of lay the groundwork for radical decentralization in ways that we haven't had to really face before. We've been extremely lucky living in the contiguous United States. I think that's going to change in our lifetime for a lot of reasons.
So you think that decentralization would aid in the overpopulation issue? Are these?
I think it would allow for a conversation about how we distribute resources. So one example is if you were to talk to someone in the Northeast, in a blue state, a Democrat, about how unfair it is that states like, red states, Kentucky's a perfect example. Kentucky takes a net negative in taxes relative to reimbursements for Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP and stuff like that. And that's not to disparage Kentucky at all. It's just to say that, there's this misallocation that we can point to from Washington, D.C., but why don't we think a little bit more clearly about the way that Kentucky operates as a state and about welfare in general. And I think that I've found, being surrounded by mostly left progressives, that that's a really effective way to communicate this idea, is that, well, look, if you think that you're morally or economically superior to these other areas of the country, then assert it. And to answer your question directly,
stand out, do on your own.
Right. To answer your question directly, Guns, yeah, I think it would, because there's a level of innovation that allows for, especially in the U.S. as we stand right now, right, with 350 million people, there will never not be enough food, even if every state were to secede. I mean, most places has fertile soil and the ability to make radical amounts of crops relative to times before us, and so technology allows us to do a lot that we couldn't do before.
Aeroponics.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you can grow 12-foot pot plants like Afghan Kush right in your backyard.
Yeah, and then eat it.
So, I mean, this is a weird tangent and rabbit hole, but ultimately, I just think that that's the direction we need to be going in, is finding kinship in states and people groups, and getting into these pockets. And when the right gets really exercised about Black Lives Matter having Marxist leanings or black ethno-nationalism, and the left gets upset about white ethno-state advocates, we should be telling them that we want that to happen. Why is it that we want Richard Spencer or Black Lives Matter ethno-state advocates in our country? That's weird. Let's let them have their own pocket of land and do their own thing. That's cool.
Yeah. Literally forcing them at gunpoint to be neighbors. It's like, we don't need that. But they can quite peaceably do their own thing. They'll fuck away from everyone else if they want to. And they do. Right. They want it. We want it. I mean, go nuts, boys. The only thing holding you back is, the federal government.
Well, and leftism as an ideology, right? Because it's innately authoritarian. And so if you talk to some Connecticut soccer mom leftist about letting some Richard Spencer have his own swath of land in the contiguous United States, she would lose her mind, because not only should someone like this be forced to remain in the United States, but they should be miserable because how abhorrent they are. And I take obviously a very different view of that, but I think that authoritarianism is going to be one of the big hurdles to get over as an ideology.
Yeah, we see
if you don't like it, then leave.
Right.
Well, if you don't like it, go and do your own thing, I think is the preferred answer, But
that's my hope with how crazy things are getting right now. Just polarized political sphere is I'm hoping at one point they're just like, I'm hoping that they're not going to just turn into, oh, wow, I really want to go to war to force my opinion on them. And then eventually they're just like, hey, look, let's just give up and you guys can do your thing over there and we'll do our thing over here.
Yeah. And I did an IG live yesterday with a buddy of mine from Instagram. He was also a former Marine. He was a grunt in Marja at the same time I was in Camp Leatherneck. And he's a big communitarian anarchist voluntarist. I don't know how he would necessarily label himself, but ultimately he's of the mind that he's a Hispanic guy in Florida, and so he gets close with his neighbors, and realizes that if he has to pull his gun to protect himself, it's going to be his buddies that get over on the porch with him, and it's not going to be our sporadic Instagram friends all over the country. And I think there's really something to that. But keep pushing the fact that this is just irreconcilable differences, and we should treat it like divorce. Why do we have to,
Yeah,
100%.
Instead of forcing each other to live with them, just say, hey, maybe it's just better to leave each other alone.
Yeah.
So you believe in divorce, Reb?
I guess as a principle, I'm happily married, but if people want to get divorced, I don't care. What's that?
Yo, same.
Yeah. My wife happened to walk in as I was having the conversation about divorce. So
fuck.
That's a pretty good way to drop the first hint.
Yeah. Well, I gotta go. So
it was good talking to you guys. But on back to the.
Tell her I said hi.
God damn,
hey, everyone says hi.
No, it was just me. You don't have to tell everyone. It was literally just me.
That's big for me, damn it. But no, but get back to authoritarianism. It's funny how we see it on both sides. We have the hardcore right nationalists are like, well, we're all American, so we should all respect the flag and call yourself American before anything else, and we all voted for this, so we're all under the same banner. And then we have the collectivist left, which is like, well, comrade, we're all the same, and if we should all be equal and live equal and the same and blah 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 blah. And it's like, so you're both for this big overarching blanket way of doing things, which crushes individualism, crushes what's special about people, as a being, and they think that's going to end peacefully when they want to force everyone to do their thing or go up against the wall or end up in prison.
Well, they don't care. As far as the left is concerned, especially, and I'm more bullish on the left, but I go hard at the right because I am so annoyed with them. But
I can't even speak here right now, but I'm pissed with you too.
Yeah. The left doesn't care if you're willing to conform, because the left will have its molds of respectable opinion and force you through them, or and strip away the parts they don't like, or you'll perish. And we've seen that time and time and time again. So I don't think they give a single damn about whether or not you like it.
100% not.
Makes it a harder thing to talk to, but
true. I recently have been getting in arguments with people saying, hey, I believe I have these specific actions against police and helping, repair race relations and everything. And I don't believe that, I agree with you there, but I don't believe we should be using words like white fragility and, trying to say, oh, this is, if you believe that maybe for any reason you don't support this, or that your voice matters in any way over a black person's in this issue, then you are white or a fragile white. I'm like, what? That doesn't do anything, because you're just, at that point, the left likes to make these buzzwords, and I don't like those.
Yeah, they have a grasp on the English language and its use for like propaganda and stuff that the right just doesn't. And so I love reading Chomsky. I actually haven't read that White Fragility book, but I'd like to, because I think it's important to read our opponents. But ultimately, like, the leftist coalition right now is untenable, and I don't think they care because they're opportunists. But ultimately, just like the Bolsheviks, aligning with a bunch of kind of innately opposing groups like the Black community and LGBT, it just on sort of like on a community basis, there's a lot of differences that are going to be hard to overcome. And you hear guys like Hotep Jesus or whatever talk about this stuff. It's interesting to think about. I think if they had a monopoly on government, they would see significant infighting. Or even if you step away from the social issues and just think about like the Bernie bros versus the Hillary Clinton supporters, there's very little in common. Whereas the right, they are just unprincipled, and that's frustrating. But
saying one thing and doing another since Reagan, and before, really.
Since Wilson. Has everyone read Michael Malice's The New Right?
I haven't.
I've read portions.
You have.
Don't tell me what to do.
You have to read it. It's so insightful about the way that the right, especially the New Right, thinks about politics relative to leftism, and how American progressivism is extremely evangelical and has these like stated goals of sort of forcing everyone to conform, which is really interesting. And he's just brilliant. I don't know if anyone's a fan of his. I love Michael Malice. But that book changed fundamentally the way I think about American politics. It was the best book I read last year.
Well, that's a fucking selling point right there for you. Make sure you get that ad money. But
after my arguments where I say, hey, I agree with you, we should do something, but I don't like these words. I don't believe that these words are good, and they rejected me and all this stuff. I'm like, dude, all you care about is conformity. Like, it drives me crazy, and so I agree with that.
Yeah, it's even hard. I mean, I'm not sure where you're from, Rebs, but Connecticut is a. Oh yeah, so Connecticut's a wholly unique place. So I don't know. It's tough.
Northeast. Very blue.
Yes. Yeah. Very blue.
At least Iowa's like a mixed state, you know.
Yeah. Right. But you guys have the first caucus. You guys love Ron Paul out there, don't
Yeah. I think so.
That's what gave us the Wolverines. All those lads out there.
Yeah.
So that brings me kind of to the point of patriotism and how it applies in our community, because we're a very mixed bunch, and when we talk about collectivism and stuff, a lot of people who came from the right don't realize they still subscribe to a form of collectivism when they get pissed off when the more anarchist leaning types make jokes about flag burning while they're recovering status, and they might still get upset when people burn flags. And I get it, especially those who've served under the flag, wore it on their shoulder while they've had their buddies shot in front of them, so
They still get pissed about like the Pledge of Allegiance and shit.
Right.
Oh, god damn it, don't take a knee.
That's why it's like you said you went after the left harder, but you still go after the right hard. Like I find it so much easier to meme the just hilarious hypocrisy on the right.
Yeah.
Because the left are hypocritical when it comes to like what they believe, but they aren't hypocritical about saying it. But the right is. The left will be like, yeah, we know this is contradictory, but it's what we believe. And the right's like, we believe in freedom and liberty and the Constitution, but not really, ever. We don't actually ever act on that.
Yeah, I think the American right, and this is why the new right was so brilliant, is they kind of expose all of these like major hypocrisies. So for sure, the right is easier, and I think, this is from my personal experience, but I think they're easier to talk to. I think that they're generally more intellectually honest. I think for the general leftist, there are people on Twitter who are unironically saying that Joe Biden could rape their daughter and they'd still vote for him over.
Yeah,
that's
oh,
bananas.
God, I know, that's so ridiculous.
And so that mindset
it highlights the fact that it really does not matter, because you have like that. You have that belief, the Joe Biden who's like actually groped children, and then you have Trump who has countless allegations against him for all kinds of misconduct. And it's just like you have these idiots that wholeheartedly support either one of these candidates to the point where they'll say things like that.
Right. And I think for the right, it's pragmatic a lot of times. Like I have a really close family member who's a pretty ardent Trump supporter, but he'll be the first one to say like, yeah, he was kind of a bill of goods, right? He wasn't what we thought he was, but he's better than the alternative. I think for the left, it's not about the leader most of the time. Like they can rally the more undecided, less likely to vote voter by getting a really handsome, well-speaking Barack Obama. But ultimately, they want the power, not the leadership. They don't care about the leadership because to them it's the machine that holds all the value.
Yeah. They don't have quite the cult of personality and sense of nation and all that shit that the right deals with.
Right.
So where do you find yourself on flag worship and such, John?
Yeah, so like the patriotism question is interesting. I definitely have some misgivings about my most people that I talk to intimately about politics will say that I must really hate America, and I don't. I actually think in some ways I probably love it more because I value at least the rhetoric that got us to where we are, and it's that same rhetoric that lets me talk down to both sides so easily. It's like, you clearly don't abide by this document we all rally around if you're supporting X, Y, or Z. So, I love my homeland like basically everybody does. And, I'm native here, and I was, my family were a family of distant but proud immigrants. I'm a mutt. I'm, all sorts of different weird European nationalities.
What do you mean by weird?
Weird as in like the collection is odd. I'm Dutch and Irish and Italian, and I don't know, I'm from all over. But like I just think I'm kind of like the perfect cross section of some American that really has no ties to anything else except here,
Yeah.
and that matters to me. But the political organization that we find ourselves in today, I find abhorrent and frankly criminal, and nothing to do with what we talk about rhetorically as what government is supposed to be. And so I'm also the biggest critic of it, because if I am going to care about where I live and, you know, the debt that my children are going to be born into, then I should be mad. And, you know, if anybody who cared about the political organization we're in or the arc that we're on politically, they should be pissed too. And not just mad like, grr, Trump is such a bigot. Like, the system has failed in fundamental ways.
Yeah. It's the kind of pain where you're just hurt and disappointed rather than angry anymore. You're just like, what the fuck is this?
Right. Yeah.
Because this is a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while, but it's very hard to frame it. And I'm glad you came on today. With this as part of the conversation, because we do get accused, you know, anarchists and libertarians of hating America, and, you know, no different from the left. And it's like, I
I'm also
genuinely
getting
think.
lumped in with Chaz a lot more now that Chaz is mainstream.
Oh, fuck's sake! Yeah,
People find out I'm anarchist, and they're like, "Oh, all your buddies in Chaz." I'm like,
yeah,
"No,
yeah, like, shut the fuck
I don't
up.
know
No,
any
no.
of them, please."
But what I was getting at was like, I genuinely believe libertarians, you know, we might have major disagreements with nationalists, but I don't believe nationalists really love their country quite as much as anarchists do. You know, like when we see nationalists waving the flag and stuff, they talk about like a strong military and a strong global presence and all sorts of shit, and it's like, what kind of fucking what kind of American are you when you can wave the flag and support troops, you know, in lands that you couldn't name if we weren't at war there? And God knows, we're at war in so many countries. Only fucking Scott Horton and a handful of others could name all of them. But
Right.
and then call themselves like proud Americans while espousing views that the founding fathers would have been disgusted with. And it's like, you know, you can love your country and hate your government. That's 100% consistent, because our government does not represent what this country was about, and it was a grand experiment, unlike anything else. And it's
some
been reduced.
Experiments fail.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, you know, the Federalists had their way, and we ended up with a government that was not American. It was American in name and not in action. And now we're picking up the pieces hundreds of years later, and everyone's still calling it, you know, land of the free and all that.
Well, I think there's something. I'm actually working on a pretty involved piece right now, like this ebook. I'm trying to create a single source for the Iraq invasion. You go online, it's impossible to find. And so, you know, there's some cool timelines by like Mother Jones and stuff, but I want like one spot where you can go and check it all out. And doing all the reading and stuff, reading like PNAC and these UN security briefings and a lot of the neocon think tank writings. It's really interesting to see, you know, it feels like you're dissecting American right thinking, but at this point, really just like the centrist position that the empire has to extend itself for its own protection. And I genuinely don't believe that there will be an end to the grief that we have to shoot with an AR-15 or I was going to say M4, but you know, there will never be an end to the strife out there. And because we're so materially wealthy and we have such a high standard of living, getting people upset enough to really protest these things. I mean, I don't know if you guys read any of the Daily Dish. It was like this blog early 2000s, and the guy that wrote it ended up publishing a book called I Was Wrong. He was a right-leaning proponent of the Iraq war. And if you just Google I Was Wrong, you can get the PDF. It's like 80 pages, and it goes through all of his writings and the evolution of his thought through the beginning of the invasion, and then the occupation of Iraq. And it's really interesting because he has this conflict where he believes we're really, you know, experiencing this existential threat by Saddam Hussein, and then kind of comes around to realize like it's impossible for us to extend our power that far and not have a wake of corpses that shouldn't have been. And I find that interesting. He was pretty intellectually honest as it all worked out, but he was also a really influential voice to get us into Iraq in the first place for the right. And, I think that there's something there about just sort of this like end of an empire life that we're all sort of living, that, the average person sitting on their couch watching on TV through NVGs, seeing Iraq get blown to smithereens. It's exciting, and they get to like high five their buddies and crack their Heinekens, and that's that.
Trying to say
that was for you. That was for you. And I think that's
when I enjoyed watching footage of things getting blown to smithereens through NVGs. I was drinking Rolling Rock, so you can tell how far I've come.
Yeah, Rolling Rock is very different. So I appreciate your progression. I don't know. It's disappointing.
So what's your music taste like, John? You like the Revivalists?
I only listen to 30 Seconds to Mars. I just repeat that first album.
Figured.
All right, moving on. Fucking disappointed.
No, I'm trying to establish the stereotype here. The craft beer.
Yeah, I'm trying to support it. It's
from New England.
I listen to everything. I listen to mostly metal and like the stuff like
you listen to metal.
Yeah.
So the guy that did slam poetry and drinks IPAs listens to metal?
Yeah, and I like a lot of hip hop. I like a lot of like the post-hardcore, like early 2000s stuff that I had in high school.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
I listen to a lot of like Dance Gavin Dance sort of. So
cool, man.
I've heard that you should never ask someone what kind of music they like because it'll make you not like them.
I don't dislike you any more than I already did.
Jesus Christ. Well, at least you're honest, Guns.
Oh, god damn. Yeah. You wear glasses?
No, I don't wear glasses. If I did, they would absolutely be like the cat eye, thick, maybe like ivory tipped. I don't know. I've thought about it.
All right, cool. Oh, BR, I got a question for you.
Sure, it's a guest episode, but why not?
When you fuck, do you keep your glasses on?
Fuck no, that's
so you just don't watch.
I just go blind, man.
How do you know what you're doing down there?
I guess it's mostly touch and feel based.
Yeah, just muscle memory.
After a while, just keep your eyes closed.
Yeah, actually, I'm actually terrified.
Yeah,
I'm actually terrified of sex, so I just keep my eyes closed for safety.
Yeah. All right, I was just curious.
All right.
Anyway, back to whatever John was talking about.
If we were a good podcast, that little section of time right there would probably be used for an ad, but instead we're just gonna facilitate Guns'
clear
sporadic
eyes.
questions. Yeah.
Nobody has a problem with it except for y'all.
I'm sure our audience probably enjoys it. I don't know what to make of that, but it is what it is.
It breaks tension. I mean, we're talking about rough shit. We're talking about the collapse of the empire here, so I'm gonna ask if you fuck with your glasses on.
All right. No, I can respect that.
You're providing an important service. You'll be able to monetize in Kapistan for sure.
So, do you fuck with your suede shoes on?
Exclusively, yeah.
Sick, dude. Yeah.
It's like at special request, just like heels. Like, babe, can you keep the shoes on? Oh, I really like them. I really like you in them. They make your ass look good.
Sexy in your suede shoes.
And you exclusively play blue suede shoes on repeat.
Yeah, got it.
During the act.
One playthrough.
Right, yeah, that or anything by Footloose. That soundtrack is life changing.
Oh shit! There you go. That's baby making music right there.
Well, my first kid was conceived too.
So John, a relevant question. Moving on from that, what do you think about combating this kind of statist form of patriotism we deal with in this country? You know, we have guys wearing. Well, I mean, we're coming up on 4th of July, so we're gonna have guys wearing U.S. flag shirts and praising the jets that fly over and all that shit, completely ignorant of how many bombs were dropping on people and people that don't necessarily deserve it. And
they
the
cheer for
American
that
Empire, cheer for that shit just on 4th of July.
They do. They're like, I'm okay with taxes if it's for that. Like, they'll literally watch a video on Instagram of like some random building getting the shit blown out of it. Like,
Yeah,
I'm okay with taxes if it goes to that.
And
You
then,
don't even know what that is.
and the video is actually just Combat Obscura, and it says, "Oh, it's the wrong building," and they're like, "No, that's still a terrace in it. I bet though."
They meant to do it. You know, they're all the same over there.
Yeah. And they'll simultaneously be upset that there's like a bunch of Syrians in their neighborhood now.
Like, what'd you come in here for? You bombed my country, dude.
So I guess to answer your question, I fairly decentralized approach to my life too. Like I have no interest in trying to persuade people, because I think generally I'm not going to, and I'm just going to alienate the people I care about. So that's actually why I started the page, is so that I could have this distinct area where I can talk about what I care about without having to like get into Facebook arguments with people that I like otherwise.
I think that's why we're all here.
Right, yeah. Just like you don't want to know that I listen to 30 Seconds to Mars, you don't want to know.
No, I could have died without knowing that. I'm sorry for your ears.
But you won't. Yeah, so like I don't know, like I always try to make subtle points to people, particularly foreign policy points. You know, like people like the Syrian joke is one that I make as much as I can, because you can't get exercised about immigration and then create with your vote millions of displaced Middle Eastern people. You know, you look at these Europeans, particularly BR, you could probably speak to this better than any of us. A lot of the EU strife right now is related to immigration, and that's directly related to American and allied foreign policy. You know,
all of NATO is getting in there, throwing those bombs and creating those problems. So
right. So I mean, I don't know. I appreciate the idea of the Declaration of Independence and the rhetoric, and the fact that Thomas Jefferson used to ride with a Latin book in his horse saddlebags. But whatever, man. Like I'm not super interested in deifying these people, and I think it's weird that, especially as a Christian, we tend to really lionize these groups that aren't deserving of it, and not because of some like intersectional offense, but because the experiment they launched failed, and we don't remember scientists whose experiments failed. Why do we care so much about this?
I would like to speak to this.
I was really hoping Rebs would jump in with some Christian point, but go on, Guns.
Well, it wasn't about Christianity. It was about the
I know,
like the founding fathers.
I'll jump in after you.
The reason I regularly bring up on the like NormieCon pages that I follow exclusively to talk shit in their comment sections about the stupid stuff they post.
That doesn't sound like you.
I regularly bring up the fact that like during the time of revolution, that the people that are cheering for this shit in the comment section would have been loyalists, and how the America we have today is virtually unrecognizable from the one that the founding fathers crafted and all this shit. And I'm an anarchist, so like I'm not speaking to this from like a place of belief, really. I just know that these normicons, these like neo-conservative idiots, still think about these people, and like they still make that connection that like the founding fathers and the Constitution is the pinnacle of American liberty and shit like that.
I think the internet is making that trend wane in really significant ways. Like even if it's just some normicon who you plant the seeds for, you know, they see that comment section and start thinking a little bit more about it. They may get disillusioned, and I think I'm extremely hopeful, to be honest. That outside of what I've said, what's that?
I said you knew at this.
Yeah, I really am. I think that the internet is making it so that whether we like it or not, whether it's cryptocurrency or just dissemination of information, like we're in a place that we've never been before, and people are being able to see things. I mean, I'm reading CIA, DOD, IAEA files that would have never made it out to the public 30 years ago, and I can just Google it and I can see right there in black and white, and it's all unnecessarily complicated, and the empire and with all of their various acronym bureaus and nonsense make it challenging, but it's not hard to spend some time reading about this stuff and thinking about it. And that's just particularly about the Iraqi invasion. This stuff is out there, and I think that the onus is on us for people who don't believe in this to produce the content that makes the point.
I didn't read them, but the Afghan Papers was another pretty substantial release,
right.
Wasn't it? I didn't read it.
Oh yes.
Yeah. The IG basically said that the entire thing was wasteful. The concept of hearts and minds was never going to work. And this is 10 years after Stanley McChrystal came out and said, his terrorist math line about how, like, every time we kill somebody, or insurgent math, every time we kill somebody, we get two more. And so, the public has been groomed to this, but the gatekeepers, as corny as that term is, really are the only people that are forming public opinion. And I think that's changing. I think in fundamental ways it's changing. But, the New York Times, I see their website every day. I go on and read articles every day because I think it's important for me. But most people aren't going past that. They're not going on to antiwar.com and seeing what Scott Horton and his buddies have to say. They're not going on to various platforms and trying to read alternative news. And if they are, it's usually like, what's that clown's name from the right? Drudge. That's their idea of being edgy. I think
the alternative media, and it's like really not that alternative at all, or offering anything substantial up. But they think they're getting information outside of the machine.
Right.
And that's
the mainstream ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know what the balance is, but I am confident that it's shifting. And I think that
I do feel it. Yeah,
I don't know. Especially as like older people, as we get older and older people are no longer people prior to the internet age are gone. I think just imagine what a world looks like with millennials in their 50s.
They're pretty close.
True.
I guess the early ones are. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think the more our population is made up of people from the information age, not people stuck in their old ways of, well, my dad believed this and I believe it, and it was good enough for me. I'm not going to question it now.
It's what they tell me on the news.
Yeah. It's like, well, I watch Fox News. I'm not some dumbass watching CNN. That's the Clinton News Network, if you haven't heard.
I read Yahoo News every day.
Your Southern accent is excellent, by the way.
What, guns? My generic fucking Republican voice is always like a gruff. I just picture someone overweight wearing a MAGA cap and go for it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am hopeful for the change we kind of see, because I mean, Christ, our audience goes from like older people. Like I've talked to plenty of people in their 50s, being like, I just discovered you, and
he's like,
yeah, he's ancient. And then we've got like high schoolers, coming up and being like, yeah, I don't believe in any of this. It all feels like horse shit.
Even middle schoolers, and if they ever tell me that, I'm like, yo, get the fuck out of my DMs.
Like, go and play with Lego for a few more years and then come back.
I mean, keep it up, but don't talk to me about it. I don't.
I do feel bad seeing how many kids are exposed to politics, but that's kind of how it's been the last few years. But it's kind of a saving grace as well, because when people are invested in what happens in the country,
I was stupid as fuck when I was in middle school, but it makes me scared too, because a lot of times you change just to change when you're young.
Yeah.
So you might be on the right track and then
fucking libertarian to fascist pipeline,
like Liberty Punk did when we started out. Yeah, he was young too, wasn't he? I mean, you think he was in high school?
He was in high school going to college.
He just started college, his first year or something.
And then he let it go.
And that entire evolution is recorded for posterity, and
for education purposes.
Yeah, the Chaz mob can come find what you were tweeting in 2018 now that you're 30, or I don't know. It's scary. I think I have 2 young kids, and all I think about is like, I have to go live in Ruby Ridge type settings so that they can't post dumb stuff on Twitter.
Seriously, like I was talking to a friend back in the UK today, and he's just got involved with British politics for whatever fucking reason, and
He's
he was
fucking bored.
I guess shaking the shit up. But he was discussing how his position, like 30% of them managed to work their way into a like a minister position, whatever the fuck it is, some parliamentary position of importance. And I was like, well, you're fucked, mate, because you have an online existence. And I was thinking, what the fuck are politicians gonna look like when we're, the older generation? It's gonna be a bunch of young kids who are boring as fuck. No. Well, I guess for the right, it's gonna be all bro vets. And then for the left, it's going to be all these like little, limp-wristed, raised fist types. Yeah. And they're going to be the most boring fucking people, the most reptile lizards we've ever seen.
People think it's like funny reality TV now. Just fucking wait.
Well, right. It's going to be a bunch of people who never said so much as like, a racial slur playing online as a kid. All these squeaky clean, like fucking weirdos who like no.
Yeah, I'm not saying you gotta say racial slurs growing up, but if you don't do anything controversial growing up, first of all, like that's not human. You gotta do some weird shit growing up, dude. Like you gotta.
Everyone goes for the dumb fucking edgy
period. Everything's recorded now, so you're right. The only people that are even gonna get into like a substantial public office are the ones that have nothing on them,
or the ones they choose not to look at, right? Because there's been plenty of examples where they just
fine. Governor Blackface in Virginia.
Yeah, they're fine if they're on the left because they can be like, look how far I've come.
Yeah,
it's like not really that far actually.
Yeah, but the constituency doesn't care. It's just you get exercised when if Northam had an R next to his name, he would have been buried in.
That man would have been crucified on the edge of the
We might have actually killed him. Not us, but somebody.
Yeah, Trudeau's the same story.
Yeah, 100%. The fucking prime minister of a country, like a pretty fucking sizable country. This isn't some like little nation that you hear of every 5 years. Yeah, that shithole, that backward shithole. It's a big place, and just turn a blind eye to blackface. 3 different occasions of blackface that have been photographed, yelling whatever else that might be. Come the fuck on, Canada. Get your shit together.
You did that shit a lot. How many times you got to do something to get 3 photographs of it?
Especially back then in the 70s or whenever.
A lot of times.
That guy's way too young for it to be 70s. He's probably like 80s, 90s.
Black and white photos. So
right. Black and white photos been around since Vietnam. I think the dude's actually 70. He's just really good.
See, I did warn you, John, that we find rabbit holes of our own if you don't give them to us to chase down. So
you gotta be on the leash.
I'm thoroughly enjoying this. This is great.
Is somebody bathing in the background, John?
Is somebody what?
Bathing.
Oh no! Can you hear that? I'm sorry. I didn't get the green circle. I had to rinse out my mug.
Multitasking, I respect.
I thought your wife was in the bath.
Yeah,
he's just sitting there on a chair doing it. Like, babe, we're doing a podcast. Come on.
Yeah, I'm just gazing at her.
She's on the toilet,
making up for that divorce talk. I guess something I'd like to kind of wrap up on as a final kind of conversation.
How long did it take your wife to fart in front of you, John?
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's weird, Guns.
So my wife is an extremely conservative social person. Yeah, but prude is perfect too. She's the sweetest, and I ruined her life and got her pregnant. But forever.
I've been there.
That's really out of character for a Marine.
Yeah. The only difference is she isn't my third wife at 29.
Oh shit! Well, that's completely to your merit. Well done, sir.
Yeah. So she still like almost never. Like I've probably heard her fart twice.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a nice life.
That's discipline.
I don't know how she does it. She's gonna explode.
She's such a How often does she burp? Because she might just be forcing them out the other end.
Never.
Damn.
Yeah, I've never.
That's crazy.
That's almost suspicious. I'd keep an eye on her.
Yeah,
not even in her sleep.
No, well, the trick is if you keep her pregnant, then we've got two almost Irish twins. So the trick has been that she can't focus on anything else.
What is an Irish twin?
Oh, two children being born in a calendar year.
Oh fuck!
Wow.
So my
you
kids
didn't wait, did you? Was that like in the hospital bed before she left?
No, but close after.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's fun though. It's good.
I mean, I know.
I bet it's fun.
I said I know it's fun. BR said I've heard. I wouldn't know, but I've heard good things.
Fucking one-track mind, both of us. Yeah, going on another relevant tangent from that. And I think a good note to end on would be, what are some kind of foreign policy just ideas that you wish every American had heard of before you get in some stupid argument with them online, as we all do? If you could educate anyone about a handful of things, what would you go for?
Well, if I could send anybody anywhere, it would be antiwar.com, right? Because even just Justin Raimondo, like his writing from when he was really prolific in the early to late 2000s, like early to mid aughts, like it's excellent. But some really big points I try to make all the time is, let's look at the number of Al Qaeda, right? Al Qaeda has been the boogeyman that we've written AUMFs on and justified all these wars about. They're the ones who were going to be the ones crawling out of your bed from out under your bed with a nuke. That's how we invaded Iraq. That's how we've justified this campaign in Afghanistan. Let's look at their numbers. In 2001, when they hit the towers, they were 170 minus 19. Now they're 50. Now they're 50,000, and they're across all of North Africa, Indonesia, all of the Middle East. I mean, they've won the war without question.
Anyone who won't admit that is fucking lying to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point I make to a lot of my Afghan vet buddies is just this idea. Hearts and minds, it's drilled into you constantly.
We're the invaders. Nobody fucking wants us. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we're going to be greeted as liberators, is what Clinton had the balls to say on Letterman, which is just insane. We're going to win in 2 weeks, and this is just some small little army, which is true, but also begs the question as to how they can have a Manhattan Project. But Karzai, from President of Afghanistan, was saying in 2009, I think his quote was like, you can't expect people to keep losing their children and stay friendly and want to work with you. And, those sorts of things I think are really, really important for people to understand about these interventions, because it's not just sitting on your couch and watching explosions. There's babies dying all over the world. What we're doing to Yemen right now, the life of the average North Korean is almost entirely because of U.S. intervention or allied intervention. And it's brutal. And then, the final point that I would want to make is that, we treat terrorism this way, this global war on terrorism, but we did this just a few decades ago with communism, right? So we bombed North Korea more or less, like every square inch of North Korea was bombed by U.S. bombers, and they framed it as this being precision bombing. They said that this was going to be a new wave of war fighting after dropping nukes on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they killed anywhere from like 600 to 1.5 million people. And that's the same events that the Kim regime is using now to motivate their people to think that there's an imminent threat at their doorstep from the U.S. It's true. And that's, some pretty tangible things to be thinking about for them. I was just reading recently this book about Cambodia. I mean, we didn't even tell the American people because it was such an unpolitical foreign policy effort from the Nixon administration at that point. But we crossed over into Cambodia. We bombed them. 500,000 bombs is what they ultimately came up with. We killed.
God damn! In Cambodia.
In Cambodia, we killed
like 600 bomb per square foot.
Yeah, man, and we killed 600,000 people ourselves as American B-52 bombers. And then, we drag the KR Human Rights Tribunal presidents and leaders in front of the UN, and we wag our fingers at them for killing 1.5 million people in brutal ways. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, the Khmer Rouge they're terrible people, but they only had the groundwork laid for a violent communist revolution because we just killed 12% of their population by bombing. And then the KR came in and killed another 25%. And so Vietnam, same story. We killed 2 million civilians in that war. And it ultimately ended up with a unification of the North and South under a Marxist regime that still stands today. So we look at that and we say, wow, so I guess our containment policies for communism failed. And if it wasn't for the fact that the USSR was doomed to fail economically, we'd probably still be dealing with this thing now. We went and made new boogeymen in terrorism, but these countries are still dealing with this. China is stronger because of it. Communism in these countries that dealt with Western foreign policy are stronger because of it. And ultimately, if we could just keep our noses to ourselves and stop intervening in all these foreign wars, we wouldn't have the problems that we have when we look out past our east and west borders, if it weren't for the ordinance that we dropped on top of the heads of all these civilians for 50 years, 70 years. And so, now we're dealing with this really big question, I think, in this coming year of whether or not Trump is gonna really make a pivot in our foreign policy. And I'm convinced that a lot of the I'm no Trump supporter. I don't like him. I think he's an idiot, frankly. And I think he's bad in almost every conceivable way. But when you look at his rhetoric about NATO, that was entirely unique. There has not been a candidate since NATO was formed that came out and said, you know what, NATO's dumb. We shouldn't be in it. And we need to get out of it. If he really does win this next election and double down on that, and, we've seen presidential candidates change their tune policy-wise in their second terms.
Second vote, yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's got nothing to lose now. He's probably worried about going to jail when this is all said and done. So he's hoping he'll croak in office and Pence can deal with it. But, maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll actually get out of NATO. And I'll tell you, the CIA and DOD and anybody who has any interest in this, they're terrified at the prospect of us getting out of NATO, because that's how we extend so much of our global military hegemony. That's how we're able to influence politics in the EU, with the UK, with Australia, with all of our allies in Southeast Asia, with all the allies or inner workings of politics in the Middle East. It's all because we have NATO. You can walk into a fight when you got 15 people backing you up and you're talking to some dude in a wheelchair, which is basically the analog of the way we do geopolitics. It's a lot easier. And so, Iran will look a lot less like a possible boogeyman for us to send our children to die in if we didn't have to deal with NATO and all that it brings. So I don't know. I've said before, I'm hopeful, but I hate our foreign policy and I hate our government. And I'm really happy that you guys had me on.
No.
Yeah, you were all right, man.
To end on. No, thank you for coming on, man. Because that was a lot of conversations I think very valuable, especially during this time period where we have election coming up. People are starting to wander back from L to R, and believing in voting again. And well, if it's not Trump, it's Biden, and they forget all this, all that they've learned about war and our foreign policy and the way we handle things. And it's been a lot of good topics covered that I know people are going to learn some stuff just listening to this.
I hope so.
If they want to,
I learned some things.
Yeah, that's good, guys. I'm not surprised. Where can we find you, John?
Yeah, so my most active area on the internet right now is my Instagram. I post the memes that I make while I'm bored at work. But ultimately, I'm going to try to start doing some more FaceTime there and just talk a little bit more about current events and stuff. And after I'm done with this ebook, I hope that I can drive a little bit of traffic and ultimately get writing. I've published a bunch on antiwar.com and the Libertarian Institute. I have a blog, antiwarwarvet.com. You can check out all of my writings are there. But I hope to be a regular contributor at Anti-War by the end of this year, with the Iraq invasion ebook done, and then maybe I can start getting. Ultimately, my hope is to build a community of anti-war vets, so that there's a sense of normalcy for the bro vet that we talked about to look at and say, look, it's not all IPA drinking, suede shoes wearing weirdos. There's some dudes there.
Yeah. All right.
So yeah, I don't know. That's where you can find me, Instagram, and yeah, I hope if you come from here, let me know, and I'm gonna start making some hats and stuff like that for the anti-war war vet. Maybe that'll take off a little bit.
I hope so, man.
Well,
We'll plug you whenever we do this. Whenever we release this episode.
Yep, and then we'll have to get you on when you finish your ebook. We can talk a little bit about that specifically.
Yeah. Whenever you guys are ready, I'm down.
Oh, I'm
And then
stoked for
have
that.
an extra episode where you recite your favorite slam poems.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to write one just for you, Guns.
Yeah,
Send it to me.
to be fair, that
Slam
is
guns.
yeah, if you can slam guns in a slam poem, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, that might actually have to be a precedent for you returning to plug the book. But thanks for coming on, John.
Hey,
Good
thanks
talking
for
to you.
having me.